Hi, hello and welcome to Testing Chief channel. In this video, we'll be looking at a very exciting tool today used for test environment management. It's called Selenium Grid. It's not a new tool. It is already very established and loved by millions of testers globally for its ability to help them scale easily and test across operating systems and different versions of browsers. Traditionally, a tester would normally create automated tests using Selenium and would run it in their local system. So that's simple, everything looks great. But will the test suites going to remain simple and remain at the current state? There are some key questions that you should be asking yourself every time you start executing an automated test suite. This is an example of a simple TestNG test with Selenium to submit registration forms for 10 users, and it is running locally in the Firefox browser. As you can see, the test starts running in my desktop and I am running it sequentially. So one after the other, the test data is pulled and it runs in the Firefox browser. The first question is around how much can your local machine handle in terms of load. It depends on your system processor, memory, etc. But can you keep running those tests day in, day out in your local machine? How long does a test take? And will you be looking at the monitor idle when the tests are running? At many times, the work you are doing might disrupt the test running in the background as well, even if it is in the headless mode. Do you have the capability to run the tests across different browsers and even operating systems? How about reducing your overall execution time? Can your tests be run in parallel? These are the questions that you might ask yourself before you get on to venture out the Selenium Grid. A simple answer for all those questions is Selenium Grid. It helps you to run your WebDriver test scripts in parallel on remote machines. It stands out from its competitors that it is simple and it takes only a few minutes to get started with it. Let's see how it can be done. As usual, you continue to develop your scripts in your client. The Selenium Grid environment primarily consists of two components, the hub and the nodes. The hub is the load balancing manager that accepts requests to run tests and executes that remotely on the nodes that are available to it. There can be only one hub in a grid. It can even be the client, that is your local machine, and you don't need a separate machine for a hub. The nodes are the actual execution environment. That's where the required browsers exist and that's where the tests run. As seen here, nodes can be of different operating systems, configurations, and it can contain any type of browser instances that are supported by Selenium. What do you need to set up a Selenium Grid? There are three things that are primarily required to set up the grid. Firstly, an infrastructure. It could be a physical or virtual machine that you have with you. It could also be any spare laptop that you might have. You can also run them in AWS or Docker. We'll see how to set up Selenium Grid on Docker in another video. For now, let's consider it is running locally, and depending on your test load, you need to get the required infrastructure set up. The onus is on the user to set it up and maintain it. Selenium Grid will not manage it. Next comes the Selenium server. You can simply download it as a runnable jar from the Selenium website. No installation is required as long you have your JDK installed in the hub and the nodes. Finally, before you kickstart the grid, configure your hub and the nodes. Example of configuration includes what browser each node contains and how many browser instances that you would like them to run tests at a time. You can go to selenium.dev and navigate to Selenium Grid section. Click on download and then click on the latest stable version to get the required Selenium server. Using the command prompt, go to the location where the file is downloaded and run the command java-jar selenium server standalone -role hub. You can see that the Selenium hub is getting started. Copy the hub URL displayed and launch it in a browser. You can verify that the hub is running successfully. If you would like to specify additional configurations, you can go to selenium.dev website and Selenium Grid documentation. Copy the configuration for hub and create a JSON file in the same directory as that of the Selenium server. To kickstart the hub with this new configuration, run the same command as before, but add an additional parameter hub config and then the JSON file name. For the Selenium node, I am using my spare laptop which has Ubuntu operating system. I downloaded the same Selenium server jar, and as stated before, I need to specify additional configurations to connect to the hub. You can get these from Selenium Grid documentation as well. To kickstart the node, run the same command as before, but with the role as node. Once the node is connected successfully, you can go back to the hub console and verify that the required browser instances are ready to use. Finally, to run the tests in Grid, instead of the normal WebDriver, initialize a remote WebDriver. As always, run your tests from IDE. You can now see that the tests are not running in my local machine. Instead, it runs in the Selenium node. I have also made it to run in parallel this time to save time. While it runs, I can continue with my work. This way, my tests are faster and also scalable at the same time. Selenium Grid doesn't solve all your problems. It doesn't provide provision or manage the environment. You should be doing it. Maintaining it and keeping it running might be a pain in the long run. Also, at this time, you can run only one instance of Internet Explorer per node. So if you have to test with IE browser, which is surprisingly still being used by 10% of people, you may not be able to run them in parallel with a single node. Also, you cannot run more than one version of a browser in a node and can run only with the browsers that are supported by the node's operating system. Example, you cannot test Safari on a Windows, or you cannot test IE on a Mac. If you have these problems, you need to look beyond Selenium Grid. I hope you enjoyed this quick video on Selenium Grid. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment or connect with me in the social media at Testing Chief. I'll meet you soon in another interesting test automation video. Until then, bye, take care.